Welcome to the Daily History Podcast, where we peel back the layers of the past to uncover the events that have shaped our present. Today, we dive into one of the 20th century's most heart-wrenching tragedies, the Ukrainian famine, known as the Holodomor. Join us as we explore the historical, political, and human dimensions of this devastating event. In the unfolding saga of the Soviet Union under Joseph Stalin, the 1930s stand as a testament to one of history's most dramatic transformations. Stalin, as the architect of a grand socialist experiment, imposed sweeping changes upon the Soviet landscape, fundamentally altering the lives of millions. The policies he championed, steeped in the thirst for rapid industrialization and agricultural reform, came with an iron fist and an unyielding resolve. Central to these policies was the concept of collectivization. Envisioned as a means to catapult Soviet agriculture into a new era, collectivization sought to amalgamate individual peasant farms into vast collective ones. The ultimate aim? To increase agricultural productivity, feed the burgeoning cities, and finance industrial growth with agricultural surpluses. But as history contends, the outcomes were far from the idealistic visions proclaimed by propaganda. The political climate of the early 1930s in the Soviet Union, meanwhile, was dense with tension and marked by rapid change. The feverish push towards collectivization coincided with Stalin's desire to consolidate power and eliminate any inklings of opposition. Fierce resistance by peasants, wary of losing their land, was met with equally fierce repercussions from the state. It was a time when policies were enforced at the barrel of a gun, and compliance was a matter of survival. We step back to the early 1930s, to the fertile plains of Ukraine, where the seeds of a catastrophic famine are being sown. Under Joseph Stalin's authoritative rule, the Soviet government intensified the pressure on Ukrainian farmers through a policy of grain requisitions. The state set exorbitantly high grain procurement quotas, demanding amounts that far exceeded the peasants' capacity to deliver without starving themselves. This policy was a critical move in the broader strategy of collectivization, which sought to transform traditional agriculture into large, state-controlled farms. As the Soviet authorities began to confiscate the very sustenance of the Ukrainian people, the plight of the peasants turned desperate. Families watched helplessly as their larders were emptied, their bins were cleared, and not a single grain of their hard-earned crop was left for their own use. These forced requisitions were not just a blow to the body, but an assault on the soul of rural Ukraine, a land long celebrated for its rich harvests and the agricultural prowess of its inhabitants. The sweeping hand of famine did not just steal food, it also attempted to erase an identity. During this dark period, Ukrainian cultural expressions were stifled, and the repressive arm of the Soviet state worked diligently to suppress what it perceived as a burgeoning sense of national identity. Ukrainian language, literature, and art suffered under the heavy censorship and scrutiny, as the government feared that a strong cultural identity would nurture inclinations towards resistance and independence. It was a time of great suffering and suffocation of the Ukrainian spirit, where people clung to their heritage in secret whispers while outwardly succumbing to the relentless grind of Stalin's vision for a unified, homogeneous Soviet Union. Through this painful prelude, the stage was set for a catastrophe that would leave an indelible scar on the Ukrainian nation, a famine of an unprecedented scale engineered by human hands. As we peel back the layers of history, the scale of the Ukrainian famine that unfolded in the 1930s becomes ever more stark. Referred to as the Holodomor, literally meaning death by hunger, this catastrophe saw millions perish as a direct result of policies enacted by the Soviet regime. The very fabric of Ukrainian society was ravaged, with a conservative estimate of 4 million people losing their lives amidst widespread starvation and death. Witnesses of the time recount tales of despair that seem almost unimaginable. One such account comes from a survivor reflecting back on those harrowing days, spoke of the once bustling villages reduced to ghostly silences, with the only sound to be heard being that of the faint cries of the hungry. Fields that once yielded golden wheat stood barren, stripped of their bounty to fill quotas set by distant officials. Families were torn apart, not only by loss, but by the unrelenting need to survive. Personal stories evoke the image of a mother, driven to the brink of madness, facing the impossible choice of which of her children might be fed and which might not. These stories also shed light on the demographic transformations that took place as a result of the famine. With its largely rural population, Ukraine saw a seismic shift as entire communities were decimated or displaced. The demographic impact continued to resonate long past the immediate crisis, with the loss of so much life leading to a profound change in the nation's age and social structures. The rural economy, once the heartbeat of Ukrainian culture, was destroyed, leading to a social breakdown from which it would take many years to recover. The landscape of Ukraine, littered with unmarked graves, served as a chilling testament to the tragedy. Villages once teeming with life became silent monuments to the victims of the Holodomor. Homes were abandoned in the desperate search for food, and the streets that once played host to community gatherings and celebrations bore the scars of a society brought to its knees. Today, the Holodomor is seared into the collective memory of Ukraine and the world, a sobering reminder of the devastating impact of man-made hunger on a people and their heritage. These accounts serve as a bridge across time, a connection to the pain and resilience of those who faced unimaginable suffering. Through their stories, the Holodomor transcends the past, becoming a poignant and ever-relevant chapter of history that we must continue to acknowledge and learn from. Turning our focus to Section 4, Political Motives, we scrutinize the intentions behind Joseph Stalin's policies towards Ukraine. Under Stalin's rule, the Soviet Union was a centralized state with ambitions to transform Russia into an industrial powerhouse. Ukraine, with its rich soil and agricultural prowess, was seen as a critical piece in this effort. However, Stalin also perceived Ukraine as a potential threat. Its rich cultural heritage and history of seeking independence worried the Soviet leadership. By the early 1930s, Stalin's concern had escalated, leading to actions that would result in dire consequences for the Ukrainian people. Stalin's objectives went beyond mere economic recalibration. They aimed to break Ukrainian nationalism and quash any seeds of dissent. When Stalin introduced collectivization, it was not just to modernize agriculture. It was also a strategic move to strip Ukrainian farmers, seen as individualistic and rebellious, of their land and livelihood, and to integrate them into the Soviet system. Ukraine's resistance to collectivization was met with brutal force and punitive measures, including the seizure of grain, livestock, and other foodstuffs, pushing rural communities into starvation. The famine that ensued, while precipitated by ruthless policies, was also a tool of control and repression. Through the Holodomor, Stalin sought to eliminate perceived political threats. Any opposition to Soviet rule was effectively weakened as the population battled for survival. Those who expressed dissent could be labeled as enemies of the people, with the famine ensuring that potential rebels were too decimated to resist. In this way, Stalin used the tragedy as an instrument of terror to consolidate his power and reaffirm the might of the Soviet Union over its republics, particularly over the once autonomous Ukraine. The cruel logic was clear. By controlling the food supply, the government could control the people. The Holodomor not only decimated the population, but also left a lasting scar on the psyche of Ukrainian survivors and their descendants. This devastating period serves as a somber reminder of how famine has been wielded as a weapon against a people's spirit, an attempt to extinguish their national identity and autonomy. The echo of the Holodomor reverberates throughout Ukrainian society, profoundly shaping its national consciousness. Long after the immediate horror had subsided, the effects of this famine continued to mold Ukraine's sense of self. To Ukrainians, the Holodomor is more than a historical event. It's a pivotal chapter in their narrative, a tragic testament to their resilience and tenacity in the face of oppression. In the years following the famine, public discussion and commemoration of the Holodomor were suppressed, particularly under Soviet rule. It was not until Ukraine gained independence in 1991 that the Holodomor could be openly addressed and its victims properly mourned. Memorials have since been erected, not only within Ukraine, but across the globe, serving as somber reminders of the struggle and suffering endured. The National Museum of the Holodomor Genocide in Kyiv, dedicated in 2008, stands as a centerpiece of these efforts, striving to educate both Ukrainians and the international community about this dark period. Globally, the significance of the Holodomor continues to be acknowledged as more countries recognize the famine as an act of genocide. This international recognition furthers Ukraine's ongoing struggle for historical justice. Moreover, the famine's remembrance plays a crucial role in today's geopolitical landscape, highlighting the importance of food security and sovereignty and shaping Ukraine's modern relationships with other nations, particularly with Russia. The legacy of the Holodomor, thus, not only commemorates the past, but it also informs the present, drawing lines of solidarity and remembrance across the world stage. In our exploration of the Ukrainian famine, or Holodomor, we've delved into the devastating events of the early 1930s. We've uncovered how the collectivization policies of Stalin's regime led to one of the most harrowing tragedies of the 20th century. Our journey through history has taken us from the political machinations that precipitated the famine to the wrenching personal stories of loss and survival. We've seen how a nation's spirit was tested by starvation and oppression, and how these events have carved a deep scar in Ukraine's collective consciousness. As we draw this episode to a close, we reflect on the paramount importance of historical awareness. Understanding the Holodomor isn't just about remembering the past. It's about acknowledging the forces that shape societies and recognizing patterns that may emerge again. Looking forward, we will continue to unearth the moments in history that have defined human experience. Join us next time as we delve into the Renaissance period, examining the explosion of art, science, and culture that reshaped the Western world. Your curiosity fuels our mission to bring the annals of history to life. History isn't just a series of dates and events, but a tapestry woven with the threads of human experience. By learning from it, we arm ourselves with the knowledge to carve a better future. Thank you for spending this time with us, and we'll meet again soon to unravel another intriguing chapter of our past. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. As we reflect on the stories and lives that have shaped our world, we invite you to subscribe to our channel and join the conversation. If there's a topic you're passionate about, leave your suggestion in the comments below this video. The one with the most likes could be the star of a future episode. Your engagement enriches our collective exploration into history. Until next time, keep pondering the past, and may it inspire our future.